Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Today I'm going to speak about the parasha Shelach Lecha. And believe it or not, I took one line for the entire message because sometimes a line just speaks out to us. There's so much in each and every parasha, and this one is called Shelach Lecha. One of the leaders from every tribe was sent by Moses to scout the land and to bring him back a detailed report. So we read about the sixth name was Hosea. It means he saves, meaning Hosea saves, was the leader of Ephraim. And it comes from the verse that we just read, Bamidbar 13:16, where we were told, those were the names of the men whom Moses sent to scout the land. But Moses changed the name of Hoshea ben Nun to Yehoshua. When I read that, all kinds of questions came to my mind. And I thought, well, there's one little letter, Yud, one Hebrew letter that was added to the beginning of his name. At the beginning of God's name are two letters, Yud Hey, let me start again. Two letters, Yud Hey Vav Hey, that now begin Yehoshua's name, give the name a new meaning. Instead of he saves, God saves. And these are the first two letters of the Creator's name, Yud He Vav He. So what does this say about Hosea? Was it that God was now with him, but he wasn't with him before? Did this change his character, his qualities? Were the characters of Abraham or Abram and Sarai changed when Yud was added to their names, making them Abraham and Sarah? Hadn't they already been walking with God? It's amazing. The longer I read the Torah, the more questions I have. And then we read, so Ephraim was, Joshua was the sixth name. Now the third name we read is Caleb. He was the son of Yefunah. He was also chosen, but he was from the tribe of Judah, while Hoshea was the tribe of Ephraim. Now, biblical names all have meanings. Caleb, or Hebrew Kalev, Lev means heart. He was wholehearted, or it also means dog. Now, anyone who knows, and this is especially for Miriam, anyone who knows anything about dogs understands their qualities of selfless love. They are just wholehearted, and they are loyal beyond anything that we know. Now, isn't it interesting that Caleb's name wasn't changed? Why not, do you think? Now, Caleb was chosen to represent the tribe of Judah, but he was not a native-born Israelite. He was a Kenizzite, an Edomite Gentile, leading the tribe of Judah, the prince of all tribes. Now, Kenaz, from which we get Kenizzite, he was the grandson of Esau, the twin brother of Jacob. Kenaz was also the brother of Amalek. Yes, Amalek, our longtime enemy. Kenaz had a son. His son was Othniel, meaning strength of God. And he became the first judge of Israel to lead his people into a 40-year peace. That shows me it doesn't matter what family we were born into. What matters is how we choose to live our lives, with or without the God of Israel. Now, the book of Shoftim, if you read it, it speaks volumes about the cycles that Israel would go through after their last great leaders, Moshe and Joshua, had passed away. When the people of Israel honored and obeyed the heritage passed down to them by these two men of God, they lived in peace. Israel lived in peace and prosperity. But as soon as they forgot their God and turned to other gods and disobeyed his commandments, that's when the enemies arose against them. We see these cycles have continued to this very day. That's what's happening in Israel right now. Yehoshua, or Joshua, the native-born Israelite, Caleb, the Ger, the stranger among us, and Esau and Amalek, the enemies of Israel, are still all playing a part in the unfolding development of the people of Israel. Now, Joshua represents those who love their people and their heritage. Caleb represents those who chose to be one of us and to follow our gods. And he was given a share of the land and a place amongst us to this very day. And we read in Numbers 15 how everything that we were given was also for them, for the Ger, the stranger among us. Now, Esau and Amalek represent those who never wanted to be part of us. They prefer to nurture their hatred of God and seek the destruction of his people. And we see that to this very day. They represent the gods of this world. Amalek's relationship of hatred toward the God of Israel has been the root of anti-Semitism throughout the ages. What we are witnessing today is none other than a spiritual war. Now, do you think that there was something about Hosea that made him worthier of having the letter Yud added to his name than Caleb? Caleb was not a native-born Israelite, but it took more resolve for him to follow the God of Israel, demonstrating his faithful love for God. Today in our community, we have those strangers among us, the Gerim, who have left their religions to follow Israel's God, some to the dismay of their own families. Now, there's something about a name. In Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, the famous words of Juliet are, "What's in a name? That which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet." So this quote means that the name of something does not define its essence. Yet, contrary to Shakespeare's understanding, in my own mind, and I may be wrong, Hebrews' names do often define the essence of the person. So why was Hosea's name changed? Did he lead a different life than the one he had lived before Moses died? We don't know. We don't hear much about how he lived. But maybe it had to do with his role. His previous name, Hosea, as I said before, means he. Hosea saves. So perhaps he had only led himself. But now, as Yehoshua, which means God saves, he would be leading an entire nation into the promised land. Moses was the previous leader, and he was known as a savior of Israel at that time. Now it would be Yehoshua. And then we read another Hosea in the Haftorah portion of Shelach. And this is a prophet with the same name. He was told to marry a prostitute as a warning to Israel of the coming judgment because the people, once again, were whoring after false gods. Now, Hosea was told to name two of his children, Lo Ruchama, which means no mercy, and Lo Ami, you're not my people. God's people had once again turned away from him. So God was turning his face from them, just like today, but not completely, because his mercy will never leave us. But it would now be turned toward the house of Judah, Caleb's tribe, the tribe where he was the prince. It's so awesome for me. And the more I thought about names, the more I recognized the importance given to them by our God, who first introduced himself by name in the first of the 10 Commandments. Anochi Yud He Vav He, Elohecha. I am Yud He Vav He, the Lord your God. Throughout the scriptures, different names are used to depict God's relationship with his people. We read El Shaddai, which is often mistranslated as mighty God. El Shaddai depicts a nurturing God because Shad means breast. God would breastfeed his newly born nation until they could be weaned and stand on their own. Elyon, El Elyon, is the God Most High. Adonai Yireh, or Yud He Vav He Yireh. I'll just say Adonai instead. So Adonai Yireh, our God, will provide. And I know that every one of us can tell stories about God has provided for us. Adonai Rapha, the Lord heals. Adonai Shalom, the Lord brings us peace. Adonai Nisi, the Lord over me is a banner. The Lord is my banner of love. Adonai Roi, we sing that every week. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Adonai Tzvaot, the Lord of the armies, who goes before his people into battle. He's also Avinu Shabashamayim, our Father in heaven. So his name, each name refers to his desire to provide, to heal, to bring peace, to protect, to be victorious, to guide and care for those who walk with him. So Joshua's name was changed. But did that mean he had become a completely different person? I remember in my former days when I was searching and I was told to, pray for Jesus to come into my heart and that now I would be a new creation, a new creature, and that all the old things had passed away. So I did. And something happened in me that I can't explain. But I believe that God simply opened my eyes and my heart. It's like the Tanakh says, circumcised my heart. But was I a new person? I still struggled with my nature, and I still struggle it with today. But I know that what I desired more than anything was I needed a new way of life, a new way of living, because so many of the choices I had made in the past had led me to such a low point in my life that I absolutely needed a new beginning. When I look back, the one thing that happened at that moment was that I would now learn to rely on God, to trust him to help me through the hard times, and to rejoice and give thanks in the good times. His words taught me and still teach me healthy boundaries, and I was and am still willing to respect them. I wanted to change my name. The name Israel means one who wrestles with God, referring to Yaakov, Jacob, who wrestled with an angel of God and prevailed. The angel changed Yaakov's name, which comes from Ekev, heel, to Israel. Yaakov had grabbed onto things that did not yet belong to him in a manner that he devised, or his mother. But later he would acquire them and so much more, but in a rightful way. But he continued to struggle until his last breath. This seems to be the fate of God's people until we come to terms and make peace with our Creator. Even places were given names to commemorate events that took place there as a teaching tool, such as what we've just read in Numbers 13:12. It says they went in to scout the land and they were told to bring back fruit of the land. And it says that place was called Wadi Eshkol. Wadi meaning, Eshkol meaning cluster, because of the cluster of grapes the Israelites cut from it. It was huge. This was meant to remind us of the abundance of God's provision. Throughout their journey in the desert, names like this were to help the Israelites learn from their mistakes and not repeat them, and to remember the miracles of the God who continued to sustain them. For example, in the last parasha, we read the name Tavera, which referred to the place where fires burned, and the people at the edge of the camp were consumed because of their constant complaining. Remember that. When we want to complain, let's find a way to turn it into thanksgiving, because I think we still haven't learned from that lesson. A name also reflects a person's reputation. Hopefully, our name reflects the qualities that God has given us. I wasn't always proud of the reputation I had earned during my 10 years of New Age involvement. Before God grabbed me and said, "Genig, enough is enough," He opened my eyes so that I was embarrassed by my previous behavior. There were times I was unstable, flighty. I didn't ask for advice, so I often made poor decisions. I didn't respect authority. I didn't always keep my word. It didn't mean much to me. There were times I had absolutely no self-respect, no self-esteem, and no purpose other than the one I had set for myself. And I had set very few boundaries for my behavior. I simply had not earned a good reputation, and I'm praying that that has changed today. I'm still that same person, but God opened my eyes and He opened my heart when I finally had the humility to admit that I needed help. That's when I began to see God take over and guide me in the opposite direction from where I was going. When I look back on my life, I see that He has always guided me, always nudged me when I strayed from the right path. Am I a different person now? Have the first two letters of God's name been added to mine? I certainly hope so. He had already created me in a unique and wonderful way from the moment of my conception. But I didn't understand that. My nature hasn't changed, but living within the boundaries set down in the Torah is what is changing me. That's what teaches me wisdom. That's what gives me clarity of vision and helps me make the right choices. I understand now that if I hadn't experienced all those things, all those adventures and misadventures, I wouldn't be able to fulfill the role that God has placed me in. Our Father in heaven, Avinu Shebashamayim, desires that every person on earth would fulfill his purpose because He loves His creation and He knows what's best for us. When Joshua asked in last portion, he asked Moses if he should stop Eldad and Medad from prophesying in the camp instead of with the other 70 men. Moses cried out to Joshua, "Would that all of the Lord's people were prophets, that the Lord put His Spirit on them." God gives us free will. He implants His Torah in our hearts and lights our path. Not with the visible cloud by day or the fire by night as He did then, but He knows how to reach every one of us in a way that we can understand. All we need to do is be humble enough to listen to His still, small voice, His quiet nudging through our instinct, and to read the written Torah and obey. He gives each of us a new name, those who are willing to follow Him. And it's up to us to step into the role that our new name represents. But the name above all names is Yud He Vav He, the name that holds the key to life, to love, to peace, and ultimately to joy. And that's what the world needs now. Shabbat Shalom.